So I'm going to go to Pat Dewby, who is the Alpha and the Omega. You introduced it, and I thought it would be grand if you was the last one. And you've been around, like myself, quite a lot. So would you like to give us an overview and a roundup?
Oh, an overview and a roundup, right. I've got my sort of contribution to this set out as to why. Yeah. And it's the importance of cooperatives in terms of they have always, from the very beginning, been set up for social justice, to address the social injustices that are going on. And that is as relevant today as it was in 1844, as it was back in the start of civilization. I can't remember who it was, but it was a female anthropologist who said civilization started when a group of people stopped to nurse somebody who got a broken femur. They'd found a femur that had a healed fracture in it, and that must have meant a cooperative society developed to actually make that person heal and keep them going. So cooperation to me is in the blood. It's in the very DNA of all human beings, apart from capitalists, of course. But all too often, cooperatives are described as a secret society. And to quote Chris Harris, I didn't join the cooperative movement to be part of a secret society. I think we need to start shouting loud and proud. Women's Challenge, yeah, that was an amazing event. I was at that event, but what has happened from that event, it sort of dwindled away. I'd like to see from this particular event that the momentum is kept going, that there is a massive women's conference on International Women's Day. And if we have to get women pie makers in as well, then let's join it together and get women's pies on the go as well. And perhaps another conference on the day when women's pay actually reaches the end in comparison with the male pay. I think it's about October time now that ends. Let's raise awareness of that equality is not here yet. And if the law needs changing, as Debbie said, well, it's not just the law that needs changing, it's the actual view of cooperatives. Cooperatives are within the auspices of the Treasury. It should be moved to the business sector. And the FCA give approval to who are a cooperative. Well, Ian Adderley is a lovely cooperator and he is brilliant, but why isn't it Co-ops UK that has that overarching view? But ultimately, everybody is referred to young people, and it's education, 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 as far as I'm concerned. Young people do not know about cooperatives. Well, obviously Cheryl's grandchildren do, but that familial connection in terms of wanting to know the divvy number. No people can actually articulate to me why it was so important to them that the divvy number was known, that it was repeated at the co-op shop. And it was because women got their own money. That was at the time. And this was borne home to me when I found my mother's Harrogate and District Cooperative Society book. She was widowed in 56 and setting up a home in Harrogate in 58. She had to have a male guarantor for her mortgage, and she couldn't get credit apart from at Harrogate and District Cooperative Society. And I have to say it was that sort of inspired me to go on to actually investigate why cooperatives operated this way. And I also had a good mentor in Chris Harris and Cheryl as well. So there's lots of opportunities for us to take this forward, and that's what I'm hoping will happen. But if we're going to talk about what needs to be done, let's find out at the various conferences. Let's talk about the credit unions. Let's talk about the campaigns for modern day slavery. And when? Well, let's do it from now on. And to quote Emmeline Pankhurst, I incite this meeting to rebellion. Let's crack on and do it. That's my contribution.
I do love a rebellion. So after that, I'm going to go to a question from Lowry, which is, are hierarchical leadership models truly compatible with cooperative values? And do they work for women? Who'd like to have a go at that?
I'll go, Cheryl, because this is something we're talking about a lot at Cooperatives UK at the moment, in the way that we operate as an organisation, because I think it's a real challenge if you're not a worker co-op. So if you're a worker co-op and you've got a real flat line structure, it's a lot easier to enable that voice. But if you're not a worker co-op, you know, Cooperatives UK, ultimately, you know, myself and Claire, Society Secretary, and by the way, in the leadership team at Cooperatives UK, there's 5 leaders and 4 of them are female, including the CEO and secretary. But if you are, you know, our role is to work for our members. You know, it's not, you know, ultimately that is who we are responsible to. So unlike a worker co-op, when you're responsible for delivering the values and principles against the workers themselves. So I do think it's a real challenge, but that doesn't mean you can't have strong and good employee voice. And making sure, so we take a lot of ideas from the worker co-op movement. So we operate squads, so like circles. We try and make sure we consult on everything within the organisation. We're just working on, we've had a restructure recently, so that leadership team that I described is fairly new as of this year, actually. So we've actually been doing leadership team meetings, and one of the things that we're looking at doing is how can we actively ensure that our policies do lean towards diversity and structural inequalities, and it's really difficult to see from a position of privilege how those inequalities play out, but they do play out in the workplace. We did a scoping session as well, and something like about 70% of the staff at Cooperatives UK, believe it or not, are more introverted. I'm not one of them, you might be surprised to know. I'm on the extrovert end. But again, it's like trying to, like, if people don't naturally want to speak out in staff meetings or don't naturally want to put themselves forward, how you get that balance between pushing people out of the comfort zone, maybe. So yeah, I think it's a real challenge. So I think that if you, like I said, in a hierarchical leadership model, it is challenging, but it absolutely can be done. And like Debbie talks about, you know, look at Debbie, look at Shireen Corey-Hack, look at, you know, all the phenomenal female leaders we've got here. And I think sharing our best practice and knowledge would be really helpful to do in that arena as well.
Thank you, Rose. And as the Vice Chair, I can concur with all of that. It is happening. And one of the things that I'm always banging on about, and I know Rose will recognise this, is I can't bear the apex. The Co-ops UK is called the apex organisation, and I often refer to us as the oil and the glue. And I think that is a woman's perspective. You know, we knit it together, and it was great to see the knitting happening even as we were speaking. That, you know, that weaving women within the co-op movement, that we are the oil and the glue. I've got another question. Is how much hope for the co-op movement do you invest in the next general election and politics, or do we just get on with it from the bottom up rather than the top down? Would anybody like to go with that? I know I've got some thoughts.
I'd be happy to come in there. I really don't think it's an either or, and until I'd like to link it to the other question about, is it about women or is it about diversity? I don't think we should get that complacent, actually. I think there's some parts of the corporate world who are far more diverse than the cooperative movement. Why? Because capitalism is actually very good at reproducing their elites. And when they can pull in elites because it's about power, they forget whether they're women, they forget what colour they are, they even forget whether they're a disabled person, not disabled, or whether they're LGBTQ+. And you can see when you look around the world, the elites are somewhat more diverse than if you look at movements that are supposed to be representing the ones that are seeking social change. So I don't think we should get too complacent, but we have a place. And the next general election is hugely important for us. We must win. We must have cooperative values there, because it's about the nation that we want to see. In Wales, as Bethan said earlier, we've got the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, which, if we were able to implement it in its full entirety, would actually be transformational, truly transformational. Part of the challenge in being able to do so is because we have a UK Westminster government who refuses to devolve, but also does not think in an aligned way with what's happening in the devolved nations. And I was just looking at a tweet from our Senedd where Wales is on course to double the number of worker-owned businesses across Wales. That's how committed we are in Wales. We need a government who's also committed to that way of working, because it will help the bottom up flourish, and it will help tackle inequality in a ways that we are held back here.
Excellent. Before I bring in Bethan, I'd just like to say, as someone who is a disabled working class woman of an Irish travelling heritage, the elites tend to want us in the display cabinet. Not necessarily do they want us to acquire any real value from our participation, but that's just my gripe. Go on, Bethan.
I totally agree with you, Cheryl. I totally agree with you, but let's not think they don't, because it's talking about power. So they do go for diversity if they can carry on holding power.
Absolutely.
Just a couple of comments, I suppose. I think linking really the hierarchy. I mean, there's lots and lots of overlaps and alignment between lots of different questions. I think for us in Wales, you know, for the biggest direct threat at the moment, obviously we've had withdrawal of European funding, which was really key to helping support a social business sector, whether that was through the cooperative model or other models of social business. And that withdrawal of EU funding has had a big impact on the ability of organisations like ours to continue to support. In the short term, that's okay. In the longer term, I think if we don't have a change of Westminster government, that is going to, because the regional allocations are not coming to Wales, they're not being devolved to Wales to allocate. So it's a mess at the moment, and the funding landscape is a real risk. And I think that links with the question of hierarchy, because as leaders of organisations that have got to survive in the financial climate at the moment, it's very difficult to balance a flat hierarchy and the need for completely democratic decision making, which takes time, with the need sometimes to react and respond to situations that put organisations at risk. And I think that's something that I'm interested in. How do we as a network of cooperative leaders who really are bought into those principles and want to operate as flatly as possible, how can we support each other on that learning journey? Because for me, that is a journey. Like in COVID, in my previous organisation, I had to be directive and take decisions that were non-democratic within a couple of days at a time regularly, because the rules were changed. So I think it's one I grapple with from a philosophical point of view, wanting to do the right thing, but it is difficult leading organisations with a completely flat hierarchy when somebody at some point has got to take decisions. And I think just going back to Pat's earlier points around human connection, and I genuinely believe, and part of my passion for this, being part of this movement and previous roles, is people thrive on human connection. Well-being is founded on the ability to connect as individuals, and communities were established for all of the faults of the past and the challenges that communities faced. Communities were enabled to support each other or had to support each other, and they were constructed in a way that enabled them to. And that gave people meaning and purpose. And I truly believe that, you know, when you see people retire who have maybe lived a life entirely in a capitalist model of work and economic activity, they want to give back. And actually, how I think the cooperative movement is one of the biggest, best kept secrets, actually, or not a very well, it's a best kept secret. I grew up with parents that were heavily involved in the Labour Party, and I've never heard of the Co-op Party, and I've been really active in politics, not politically, but as a civil servant in Wales. So either I'm really, really blinkered and I've had headphones on, or we're not doing enough to promote the movement. And I really think there's power in us doing that. And in relation to that question, we need to be driving it through every avenue, through schools. I was talking to Welsh Government innovation colleagues yesterday around, they are keen to be getting social enterprise and cooperatives into the curriculum, you know, and my son's studying business studies. He's not studying social enterprise and cooperatives and you know, yeah, I just think there's a lot to do, and I really want to be part of collectively shouting loudly about it, and the run up to that election, trying to influence as much as possible, as well as getting on with it and doing the real important impactful work on the ground as well.
Thank you. And I think that leads into the question I've got from Christopher Hall on going back to our co-ops and workplaces. What actions can we take to support and empower cooperative women in cooperatives? We'd love some ideas on that. Nobody want to go for that? I'll go for that then. I think it's essential, and to reiterate what Pat said, that we do think, and it goes back to the other question about should we still be thinking about women or should we be thinking about diversity? And I think the answer is the same as should it be political or should it be social? It should be both, and it should be working together, a bit of Principle 6. So I think in terms of Principle 6, we should link to the Co-op Party and the Co-op Party Women's Network. We should form networks and meet regular women who have got there, if you like. You know, myself, I'm the vice chair of the Co-op Party. There are CEOs who are women. We need to be looking at how we support younger women coming online, how we get into schools more, how we just break this secret. Co-op News can help us with this, but I think sometimes we behave a bit like a cult. And we keep the thing, you know, inside, and we're all priests and priestesses of this wondrous cult, and we chant the mantra of the values and principles. We can all do our catechism, but we do need to get out more. And I think CCIN and the others, there's great work being done now with Co-ops UK, the party of working together and seeing how we can pull that together. And as part of Co-ops UK strategy, our strategy is about diversity, and we do want that to be real diversity that includes women in all our shapes, forms, sizes and colours, abilities and disabilities. So I think we're on it, but it's up to us after this event to carry on, and I will torture you all with emails ensuring that you do, as well as getting in touch with David and ensuring he does as well. And I don't think that will be hard, because I think most of us do want to do it. So I've got two hands now. I'm going to take Anka and then I'll take Philip.
Yes, I agree with you, Cheryl. That's what I wanted to say. I think it's important to take into account intersectionality and the fact that when discrimination occurs, it's not based just on gender. Sometimes it's based on other dimensions as well, and co-ops need to take that into account and not think that it's just gender-based. And it's important to have the right mechanism in place within the workplace to kind of evaluate the situation and try to come up with solutions in that respect. And the other idea I had was that the ICA is in the International Cooperative Alliance that is in the middle of re-examining the cooperative identity, the statement on the cooperative identity that was last amended in 1995. And I think this is an opportunity for co-ops and cooperators to contribute to that discussion and to maybe even push for having a stronger wording within the 7 ICA principles when it comes to equality, and because yes, we can say that co-ops are open to everyone, but should there be more of a description of what that means, or should there be another principle altogether to specify that co-ops should push for equality? It's just an idea that I had.
Thank you. As you know, I am an internationalist myself. I'm not a globalist, but I am an internationalist. And yes, I've got grandchildren too. I've got 14 grandchildren.
14?
And 3 of my grandsons are Malawi heritage. So I always like to see what's going on with the Malawian co-ops. And I'm going to bring Shamil's question into this. There are international efforts that are made by women. Rose is the chair of a group that is an international group. So yes, we are interested in Africa and women in Africa and how they become engaged in cooperation, in international cooperation, and I'm sure David can send some links after so you can find out more about what is happening there. In terms of Colne Valley, I love Colne Valley. I did quite a lot of work with Colne Valley with my other hat on as you know, the chair of the Guild of Social and Community Workers, and we had the Fair Care Mark, which we presented at Congress last year, and the cooperative movement was well behind it. So both Equal Care Co-op and Colne Valley are wanting to have that care mark, which would mean that in terms of care, I have quite a few carers in my family, as well as me being disabled and having disabled people in the family. The Fair Care Mark is about the equity between the worker and who the people we usually call service user, I call co-owner. Yeah. So in a co-op, we are co-owners, we do it together. That as a disabled person, I'm responsible for the terms and conditions of anybody that is employed. And as an employee, you are responsible for my autonomy, my citizenship, and making sure that that care underpins it. So yes, I love Colne Valley. Veronica is my usual link, and I love her to bits. I'm sad she wasn't here today, because I would have given her some of those metaphorical hugs over the camera. And yeah, we're going in a very good direction. I don't know if you watched Congress this year. There was on Saturday on the main stage, we had disabled people talking about being disabled cooperators and what that means and how we can improve that. And also I'd take us back to, because politics has been raised, you know, the DWP is very hostile, both towards care workers and disabled people. And there is a trap there that we're both in. Disabled people, in order to get our benefit, to be able to pay for our care, and most care workers are women. A lot of care workers are international, in that we encourage immigration in order to give people low pay. So there is, within the cooperative movement, there's an opportunity here for women from Britain and women from overseas who are encouraged to come to Britain to work in care, not to maintain a care service that deliberately causes them to have low wages and then to have to apply for universal credit. And I don't know if anybody's had to apply for your universal credit here. It is appalling the way that those people are treated. The same with disabled people who have to try and claim benefits. A lot of disabled people are in debt. So given that the white paper that has come out around disabled people is abhorrent, you will be seeing a lot of us. And on the 17th of July, the Co-op Party will be holding an event, the Disabled Network, around the white paper on disability. And there's a lot of things that the cooperative movement can do around care, around housing, around all of that stuff. So as the government is laying more pressure on us, our escape, if you like, our hope is that the co-op movement can open its doors, and in terms of developing new co-ops and cooperating, we can solve some of those issues. Are you glad you asked?
I certainly am.
Okay. And Shamil, I'm hoping that within your question about how do we work with international cooperatives, you will have had an answer with the first session and with the second session. But if you want something, because we're running out of time now, if you want something definitive, then I can ask David to send something and write it back to you, and we will check all the questions and make sure we've answered them and put in some written responses.
I would really like to thank you all for the invaluable contributions that have been made from all our speakers. And I'd also like to thank Dan Roberts and John Jones, who are the technical team behind this. I know sometimes it can be like herding cats when it comes to actually getting the technology sorted out. And in particular, I'd like to thank David Smith and Christopher Hall, who are the Co-ops and Mutual Wales team. So thank you very much, everybody. I think you'll be hearing from us in the future. Take care.